What's up, everybody? Soccer Dad Pod Time. JB here. We are zooming today, and it's not the wolf pack. It's the two pack today. Much different than a six pack, but way more fun. Well, actually, that's debatable too. So, joining me today for today's episode, carpool co-host extraordinaire, living in his basement out there in what is that, a suburb of Columbia? How far west are you?
Ellisville. It's not that far west.
Yeah,
but
kind of same thing.
It's still west of 270, which, makes it difficult. But the reason we're zooming is because St. Louis has not figured out yet how to deal with weather very well on the roads. And we had about, how many inches did you guys get in Webster, do you think?
12-ish feels about right.
But I feel like we had as well. And I tried to stay on top of it. I got my leaf blower out on Saturday, and that worked really well until Saturday night when it snowed another 8 inches.
Yeah.
And then I had to use a combo of shovel and leaf blower. My driveway is spotless.
So, true story, both my kids last 48 hours have been out there hustling it. They are both dead in the water.
Yep.
But they are $1,800.
Dang.
$1,800 in snow shoveling.
Yeah, I gotta get back on that.
Well, I tell you what, man, that was a quick in here. Our guest is punctual, early. If you're not 5 minutes early, you're not
late.
on time.
You're late. Oh, guys. Oh,
what's up, Coach? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, JB. Nice to meet you. Zach, how are you?
Doing good, sir. Doing good.
Awesome.
So we were just kind of rolling in here, getting caught up, talking about the little bit of weather here. Apparently, the snowmageddon that was from Dallas to New York passed through. I think we ended up getting between 8 and 12 inches total around here, and
wow,
yeah.
Well,
And
we were expecting freezing rain, so of course, we have no snow plow, we have no salters, and it was panic stations, and nothing happened. Although today was a Baltic 34 degrees for us.
34.
Hence the bad head in. Go do so.
Well, let's see. 34 degrees is about 25 degrees higher than ours.
Yeah.
So you win.
Yeah. And that was cold.
I woke up and got outside to go to the gym this morning, and it was -5.
Oh man.
Outside.
Was that with wind chill?
No, that was the actual temperature. Wind chill, I think, was -15 or 20. But that and the roads were not very well cleaned off. Hence the 12 plus inches of snow and freezing cold. It's hard to get that off, but yeah, I'm glad things are going well in Wilmington weather-wise.
Yeah.
No freezing rain, no snow. It's nice.
I think our kids were hoping for a day off, but they didn't get it.
Good.
Did you go to the grocery store when they made the announcements of the weather?
No bread, no milk. I mean, it's hilarious. I mean, it's comedy.
My favorite thing, and somebody said this, and I don't think they were from St. Louis, but they said, I've never understood this. When they say it's going to snow, bread and milk is just gone from the grocery store. But not one time I've been stuck at home thinking, man, you know what I could really use right now is some milk and bread. No, I need tequila and Doritos.
Yeah.
That was the comment. I thought that is true. I've never gone without or needed bread or milk during these times, but
yeah.
Well, my understanding is the bread and milk saying stems from prison days. So the people that are like clamoring for bread and milk, they're a little sus. You better check out their backgrounds, So
those cereal eaters.
yes, Coach Heaney. joining us from UNCW. Number one, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
We've been pinging this around for a little bit, trying to make it work. And apparently you're a little busy. I don't know. You got a program, you got recruits, you got preseason. But alas, here we are. And as we always remind our guests, as well as our listeners, that whenever we do have a guest, such as yourself, that has an accent that it sounds nothing like the Midwest, our numbers go up. So thank you early. Yeah, true. Especially if it's a northern accent. So thank you for joining us.
Well, my pleasure. I'm glad I can add to the ratings.
Well, I mean, that's all this is really about. It's about the algorithm, Coach. I mean, haven't you heard this thing called social media? It's all algorithm.
Yes.
So I'm really looking forward to today's conversation because one thing that stands out to me and what I'm really going to be interested to explore during our conversation is you kind of are breaking the rule or rules when it comes to NCAA soccer coaches, specifically from a tenure standpoint, because you're a lifer. You've been there a long time, and I would love to like kind of carry that through this conversation, because in the world of win now, you are doing what you need to do to A, win, and B, stay at the same institution. So kudos to you, because I think Zach and I were talking earlier, 25 years, is that right?
Yeah, this was the 25th season. And God, you know, you look back, it's like a blink of an eye, right? Feels like just yesterday. And no, it's been a great time for me to be here. Initially, when I first, you get a job, right, when usually somebody's not doing very well, the program is not doing well, or somebody moves on to do something and they've done a good job. So when I came in, it was a a real rebuild, and kind of threw myself into that challenge, and the energy and the passion and the drive I still have, and if that dims, then maybe I should think about making a change. But I've just been out. My hair's all messy. I've just been out coaching the goalkeepers and serving balls. So I'm right in the thick of it with the guys, and yeah, it's been a wonderful 25 years here.
So let's go back in time then. Let's go to the pseudo starting line, so to speak. Clearly, based on your accent, you're not from South St. Louis. Let's talk a little bit about your roots. Yeah. Where you're from, who was your team, what was your early clubs. Talk a little bit about your path.
I was actually I was born and raised in Newcastle upon Tyne, in the northeast of England, but my family's all Irish. My mum and dad, first generation. They're from a little place, a little island off the west coast of Ireland called Achill Island. It's in County Mayo, and as a lot of people did back in the the 50s and 60s, moved over to England for work, and my parents got married there, and was born and raised in Newcastle. But I wouldn't say I have a strict Geordie accent, because we had a pretty extensive travel as in our childhood. My eldest brother was born in Zambia. My dad was worked for an American mining company, so we traveled quite a bit. I lived in South Africa for 2 years when I was 5 and 6, and then when I was 11, 12, 13, I lived in Zimbabwe for 2 years. So 4 years of my childhood was spent in Africa. But grew up in Newcastle. That's where I was, spent the bulk of the time. I go home to Ireland for vacations and summers and see my grandparents. But was kind of grew up in a city where you were like known as the Irish, the Irish folk. And then, we go back to Ireland, and we were like, it was the Brits were coming back to Ireland. So you kind of got, good for good or bad. We used to get kind of a little bit of stick from both sides of the divide. But yeah, and then obviously when I was playing, I was playing, for the county schools back in England. Was big there for Northumberland County. When I was playing for, I actually got signed with Newcastle United when I was 16, and I signed an apprentice contract to play with Newcastle. It was a short tenure. JB, I was a goalkeeper, if you didn't know that already, but it was quite a smart kid, from an education standpoint. Went to Newcastle, and it was, pro soccer in the old days. I had a really tough time. So I was probably there about 3 months and ended up going back because I knew I wasn't going to make it the way I was playing. And they were quite honest with me and said, listen, we know you're bright, and we don't think after 2 years here that, you're going to make it. And I would totally have agreed with them because I wasn't playing very well. I wasn't used to the physicality and the intensity of the training session. So went back to school and kind of took another path, and when finished, did A-levels back in England, made the England schoolboys national team. And that kind of opened up a different door for me to, some players. We'd have American coaches coming to the training weekends, and some of the guys went over to the States, and that was kind of like the opening of a new kind of door. I could have stayed in England. I was actually offered I went on trial at Norwich City. I was offered a year pro at Norwich, and I decided, this going to do my education, we'll do something different. And I was recruited by Bob Warming, who I know you had on the show. I owe Bob a tremendous debt of gratitude. He recruited me and went to play at Charlotte, at UNC Charlotte. So took a different path and kind of, jumped out of the pro circuit, so to speak, and took a leap of faith.
So let me ask you specifically about that kind of realization while you're there that maybe you've hit your ceiling in England, but yet there's more opportunity abroad. What did that look like specifically, as far as how did you meet Bob? Where were you? And more importantly, what was your mindset? Because obviously, during those years, in the 90s in particular, if you're going to America, is it, how many steps back is that in, when you're hanging out with your buddies, like, oh, you can't cut it, you're going to go to America. I've heard those conversations. What was it like for you? And were you excited about the prospect, or was it a lifeline?
I wouldn't say it was a lifeline. I would say at the time when I went back to school after being in Newcastle for a short period, it was a gut punch. I mean, because everyone knew I'd signed, right? I was in Newcastle and your family, and then all of a sudden you're back in school and it hasn't worked out. So, but I think it just gave me a little bit like it wasn't the timing wasn't right, and it wasn't that I lost faith in my abilities as a player, but I just felt like I'm not ready. And maybe there'll be a time when I've got to make myself ready and find a different. And I still wanted to be a professional soccer player. It wasn't that wasn't the case. But I also saw the people that I was mingling with in the locker room that I didn't really kind of mesh with, in a sense of the guys I was with in the locker room. All they had one thing was to be a pro. Some of them had quit school and stopped going to school, and there was me and one other guy, and we were the ones that had actually taken our exams and taken our O levels and had a level of education. So, but then I was still hungry to. And again, I went to Ipswich and Norwich after Newcastle, and the Norwich opportunity was there. But I just felt this coming to the States, I didn't see as like okay, well let's go and do something easy. It was more adventurous for me. That I felt like this would be one, explore a different world. Take a leap, and having traveled as a kid, I didn't feel like it was I'd been away from home before, so making a jump across the pond was honestly just didn't seem as huge. It was, because once I got here, I was completely alone. There was no FaceTime, WhatsApp, FaceTime, calling your parents. You're on your own, and you just dealt with it and got on with it. So honestly, the best decision I've ever made in my life. It was truly the best decision, and thankful that for the people who helped along the way to make it happen. Bob being the one. Bob actually, it wasn't through. I'd had some contact with some universities, but Bob actually, there was a kid from Newcastle was playing at UNC Charlotte at the time, like called Dave Cooper, and he was a senior, and his school teacher was reached. Dave Cooper had reached out to him and said, "Hey, they're looking for a centre back." And the guy who was the teacher was involved with England schoolboy. He said, well, I don't know about centre back. I have a couple of options, but there's a goalkeeper over here, and I know he'd be somebody who'd be a good candidate. So Bob came over and watched me play in a county game, and got to meet with him afterwards, and that was how it happened. So I guess I did enough on the day to not turn him away. So thankfully,
I love it.
He offered an opportunity.
I love the story, Coach, about you coming over and how it was more of an adventurous spirit that brought you this way than perpetuating some ideal goal of getting, to the pro level within England or other. Mm-hmm. You eventually got there. And we'll talk about that. But I'm curious, how did you settle in? You had warming, you had your teammates, but that is a huge change. And then, yes, you lived in Africa for a couple of years as a child, mm-hmm. but how did you acclimate, and what were the things you did to kind of get yourself ingrained in the culture at Charlotte or other?
It was unique. I think at the time, Charlotte were trying to kind of, Bob was brought in a really good freshman class. And I think he was trying to change the culture a little bit of the program. And not that there weren't good players there when we arrived, but the freshman class was particularly talented. But I just remember getting there, Zach, and I didn't know what a GPA was. I didn't know what a credit hour was. I was completely, and I got there and they're like, okay, here you go. Here's your classes. And I had one of my freshman fall classes was history of rock and roll, which I highly recommend, by the way. If you ever get a chance to take that. But I was completely oblivious. So, and it was just, I look at that and go, it was very, really welcoming people. I thought the people in North Carolina, I remember going to the supermarket, and I remember, this is just so weird, like I'd be going at the register and someone said, cash or how would she say, paper or plastic? And I looked at her and I was like, what? She goes, paper or plastic? And I thought she was talking about bags. Oh, I'll take plastic. And she was waiting for me to hand her a card. And I'm like, no, credit card. I'm like, oh, I was completely talking about a culture shock. But everyone in North Carolina was so welcoming. And, the team, early on, initially, I had a little bit of pushback because I was kind of a rookie goalkeeper coming in. But maybe the fact that I played immediately and started off well. And I came over early. I remember I came over in July and I took a job as a ticket writer on campus. That's another story. A really popular job as well.
Yeah, everybody loved that guy.
People love ticket writers. And I did that for a little bit to get used to the heat. And it just started off well. And thankfully we had some early success. So, it really was. When I look back and go, I don't remember too many things. I was like that. I wasn't homesick or, obviously missed my family, but it wasn't a case of me being in the doldrums or like what have I got myself into. I just embraced everything about it. Honestly, it was new and I just jumped in with both feet.
So as a rock and roll lover, I got to ask you, when you walked into history of rock and roll, were you surprised that every answer on every quiz wasn't the Beatles?
I remember we had they allowed you, they did it. Everyone was allowed 2 minutes where you could get up and play. And it was a minute or 2 minutes of your favorite song. That was a big auditorium. And like me, I like Depeche Mode and, Yazoo, that kind of stuff, like the new romantics kind of thing. And
the Smiths.
I love the Smiths. And everyone got up and I was like, I think there was only 3 bands. There was Van Halen, Led Zeppelin, and somebody else. It was all classic rock. So of course I get up and play Only You by Yazoo or Yaz as they call them in America. And everyone was like, who the hell is this guy?
Well, the guys were saying that. The girls were like, oh my God, he's so European.
That's right.
There you go.
I was very much a single man.
So super important question too, based on your roots. EPL, who's your team? Who'd you support? Growing up, you're all over the board. Irish descent, you're living in the north of England. Yeah. Who's your team?
I mean, I was with them as I said with a youth team and played for the youth team Newcastle United. Black and white through and through. That's my team, and it was great. I played playing St James's Park and playing against I played a couple of reserve games, and yeah, it's coming from a city like that. I'd imagine, and again maybe it's some similarities with a St. Louis, like an industrial town where and I think that you really know the mood of the city based on what's happened on the Saturday. Like Newcastle doesn't win on a Saturday, you could tell there's almost like this sadness and like depression, and then if they win, it's like, oh great, the sun's shining, even though it's pouring with rain.
Well. Speaking of that, I got to tell you, true story. I have a Newcastle Upon Tyne relationship. Graduated from my undergrad, Southern Illinois.
Yeah.
My wife graduated too. Not at the time. She was going to grad school, and she was going to study abroad, and this university was University of Newcastle Upon Tyne. And I stayed here looking for a real job. And within 5 days, she called me. She's like, it's too rainy. This is not happening. Come to Europe. Let's go travel. So she took her grad school money and was out because, it's a cool area, but it is gray.
Yep, it is.
How much fun was it to come to the States and see green and blue skies and rotating rain, not constant rain, because that's such a major shift just in the whole thing. What was it about the States that maybe you loved, just from a location standpoint?
Well, I was fortunate. I think North Carolina was a wonderful place to settle. I mean, it's you got the beach where we were at, and you've got the mountains, and you got some big cities in between. But it was a big change for me. Again, you get used to that, right? It was what and training out and freezing cold and rain and wind, and it was something that you were used to. And then coming over to North America and to specifically North Carolina, I tell people this. I think I became better as a player because I was able to, I was outside training a lot more than I was back in Europe, where maybe got some games cancelled, or we rarely missed a training session, and the facilities were good. You were just motivated to be outside, and what else am I going to? I'm not going to go for 15K, 10K. I'm going to go and play and train and take shots and take crosses, right? So it lent itself to just being more outdoors and training all the time, and getting stronger, being in the gym and doing the things that I didn't have at the time when I was growing up.
I got a couple of questions to follow up there for you, Coach. One is, now you and I have never talked about this, and I couldn't find anything other than on your Wikipedia page. It says you played in Germany, but there's no proof of that online. So I need you to clarify exactly where you played and why you never stayed in Germany, instead decided to come and stay in North Carolina.
Yeah, it was. So we went when we were at UNC Charlotte. We were talking about our freshman class act that we came in 1988. In 1991, so fast forward to senior year, we were number 3 in the country at the end of the season. We had a talented group. Bob left after my freshman year and started the Creighton program. And Frank Hollenstein took over. Frank, who was a school of the mines for many years, brought that group through, and we were one of the top teams in that senior year. And we went on a tour at the end of the spring, so right before graduate, was it right? Yeah, right after graduation, we went on a tour to Germany. We played 4 games, and 2 were against Division 3 teams, Division 4 team, like an all-star team. And it was funny, we went over and talking about like the reaction of me coming to the States and what the perception was. But distinctly, this is 1992, and we're lining up to play against the Division 3 team, and you can see them kind of like guffawing and like, these Americans. We ended up beating these teams quite comfortably. So after that, 4 of us signed and went back to Wiesbaden, which was a team in the 3rd division. And it's now called SV Wien Wiesbaden, the team Wien and Wiesbaden combined. And we went back, and so there's 4 of us, 5 of us actually. There's another guy from San Francisco living in one house, and we were, getting taken care of. So while we were playing, we were training, I dove for a ball one day and got my finger stuck in the grass, and I ended up snapping my pinky finger. So I was in a cast up to my elbow. So I was still playing in the field and training and doing all that. As that was going on, my junior year, I know I'm bouncing around here, but my junior year, I'd applied for a visa, a green card, in a lottery that was going on at the time. They were giving out 40,000 visas. And because I chose to have an Irish passport, I played for England schoolboys, but I chose when I was 16 or 15, I'm going to have an Irish passport. They gave the most applicants, most of the visas. They did it by a percentage of applicants the year before. I got selected. So I literally won a green card in a lottery.
And you didn't have to pay $1 million for it.
Or get married to anybody. So it was a win-win. So I ended up, I had to make a decision. I was in Germany, and it was like, well, I had a certain window where I was like, if you don't come back and
yeah,
you're done. So I'd broken my finger, and I was like, you know what, I'm not running the risk of this. I was in the 3rd division. I hadn't made any appearances yet. This whole process had taken about a year from getting, hey, you've got a number, to getting through and doing a physical and doing all this kind of stuff. So long story short, I came back, and that was when USISL was starting off, and signed with Greensboro Dynamo.
Yeah, and you were at Greensboro for a while, I think, didn't you? That was your longest stint on the pro side, yeah?
It was. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the USISL, because this is in between the NASL folding, the indoor leagues are still somewhat churning in that area. MLS is still 4 years out. So the opportunities were pretty limited from a pro standpoint.
Yeah.
But you landed at Greensboro and had a pretty nice stint there.
We did. It was it was 1992 and 94. One of the stipulations for the US to get the World Cup was that they needed to start a pro league. So there was like a 2-year window there, and being in Greensboro, again, it was owned by Neil McPherson, who his dad had been a chairman at Nottingham Forest. Buckley Andrews was the general manager, and he put together a really good squad of guys. I just look back on that, and I was like, it was pretty wild when you look back, where the games come from now. The MLS wasn't, of course, it hadn't even started, but we were all like really motivated, because we knew, okay, if we do well, what are they're going to be looking for players in 2 years' time. So we were playing games, we weren't making a ton of money, right? I mean, but our team was great, probably really smart on Buckley's part or Neil's part. We would be playing games, and if we scored a certain amount of goals, we would get a bonus per game. And if we got a shutout, we got a bonus. Well, we'd be playing, and honestly, we'd be beating a team 5-0, and we were still kicking the crap out of them, and fighting tooth and nail to not concede a goal or score an extra goal, and to get an extra $50 a game or so. It was like it was genius, really, because people were like, what's wrong with these guys? They've won the game, like, relax. And we were just like so motivated. So we did really well. We won the whole thing 2 years in a row, and we beat Orlando City in the final. And then the second year we played Minnesota in Greensboro and beat them in a shootout. And we were thinking, hey, we've put ourselves in the shop window. And MLS was now pushed back another year. So we were all crushed, because we thought, wow, we've done some good body of work. It didn't mean anything. But managed to get there a different way, thankfully, and a year afterwards. And I was playing there, and I was coaching at UNCG with the goalkeepers. I was actually coaching at Duke women, and UNC men. So I was actually a goalkeeper trainer for all three, and I would drive between the three schools and train the goalkeepers. Fortunately, Elmar Bolowicz at UNC, he was looking to hire an assistant. It was just he offered me a job and I went to work at Chapel Hill with Elmar. That was kind of the start of getting in the coaching path here. I'd already taken my English badge actually when I was in high school, because I always felt like coaching was going to be part of my future, because it was an extension of playing the game whenever that was going to end. Yeah. So I'd started already thinking about that, and Elmar was gave me an opportunity at Chapel Hill.
I have
So
a follow-up real quick, JB. Sorry, I had to ask because you were here in the U.S. during the World Cup. You were excited about the potential of a new pro league in the U.S. Did you get to go to any of the matches while that was going on here in '94? And what was your experience like that? And I'm asking this because I have people in my family, one particular individual who is pushing very hard for us to get tickets for this year's World Cup. And
We'll
so
just take a loan out with the bank.
yeah.
Holy cow. Yeah, I did. I went to a game in DC, and it was I think it was Portugal against Switzerland, if I'm not mistaken, but it was at RFK, and it was incredible. I'm trying to think. 2000. What year was that? 94, 98. 2004. I went to the World Cup and saw 10 games in Germany. I mean, that was just the trip of a lifetime. But yeah, I only saw one game when it was in the States, and again, it was fast forward a year later, and you're playing with Alexi Lalas up in New England. So it was kind of a bit of a weird kind of moment.
So let me ask you a question. Because listening to you talk about the time frame and that gap between '94, the World Cup, the promise that the U.S. Soccer made that we would have a pro league following the World Cup, and there was this gap. But at the exact same time, in your home country, the true, as we know it today, Premier League was a couple of years into its kind of, the structure that we see today.
Mm-hmm.
It was, the Manchester United of the early 90s, and those teams were clearly top of the pile, and to a degree they still are today. But you've been part of this time arc of being there in the first inning, day one,
Yeah.
watching what was going on overseas, and then seeing this nothing, this league that was a theory. Fast forward to 2026, in which we have Messi here now. We have 30 teams. Yeah. Can you just take a second and talk about, kind of like that old man sitting on the porch, like, well, I remember when. Give me your kind of thoughts as to living and growing through the two parallels and what U.S. soccer has done professionally.
Honestly, it's a great question, because I look back on those years and go, one, being able to play in the first year of Major League Soccer in this country, in its infancy, its birth, really, and I'm tremendously proud of that, and being able to be involved in the game and help in some shape or form to grow the game. You look at Europe, and no one would have even thought the Premier League was going to be where it is today, and the amount of money that's involved, and when I was leaving the country, the quality of the training, the coaching, the facilities, all these things that have just exploded. That's just in a different stratosphere. But when you look at where we were in 1995, 96, starting off a league in its infancy, and it was I even laugh, with the guys, Brad and Aidan, talk about, some of the guys who've played for me, who have been involved in MLS, and, even stupid things like that, they're flying, chartered flights to games, right? When we were flying coach and in with everybody else to go away to fly to LA and get the red eye, all the thing that you would expect in a league of infancy, when you're trying to rate, the money's not totally flush, and people are kind of doing it on a limited amount of budget. So but I think just being able to be part of that and see where the game has grown to now, and the stadiums and the support, and I mean if you told me 25 years, 30, 35 years that the best player in the world would be playing in the US in our league, people would have laughed. But it's it's, and the talent level, and the talent of players, and the amount of players, and the quality of players that are now playing the game, it's super exciting.
You started with the New England Revolution. You mentioned Lexi. And there's been a couple others decently named people that were on that squad as well. And I hate to bring up a sore subject.
I know what you're going to say, so.
you did hold a record for quite some time, and I'm not going to ask you what you did to deserve it unless you want to talk about it. I want to ask, why was it against Steve Trittschuh?
Steve Trittschuh had nothing to do with it, I can tell you that. What's the saying? You know, any publicity is good publicity.
Exactly.
I guess.
Yeah. All PR is good PR.
Yeah. No, we were playing Colorado Rapids. Went through the warm up. This is my story anyway, and I'm sticking to it. Went through the warm up, and we, in between going in, there was a shower, rain shower. So I come out to play, and 10, 15 minutes. It's been raining, and we kick off, and there was a ball played over the top, and I was a very aggressive goalkeeper as far as being almost like a sweeper keeper. And there was a ball played over the centre backs, and I came off my line to clear it, and it bounced as I'm about to volley it just to clear the lines. It skips off. And the centre forward, it was Richard Sharp, who I'd actually played with in Greensboro. He was one of my teammates. And I'm like, it was instantaneous. I handled it outside the box. Straight red. But the kind of interesting side to that was my father had been working in Israel. He'd flown all the way across the world to watch me play for 2 minutes.
Did he ask for a refund?
Honestly, he's like raised. And then I was suspended for the next game. So he flight. So he didn't see me. He saw me play for. It was a sad story, but he still gives me some grief about it.
Can you take a second and talk about the early days? Because obviously Zach just name dropped one of our own, a good old Granite City boys, Mr. Steve Trittschuh. But the early days of the league, because there were so few teams, it was really easy to kind of look at those names that were marquee names, right? Because it was such a compact league, and it needed wow factor. For you as a year one player, can you talk about some of the names that really stood out to you, maybe from a wow factor, or underrated, or who's your guy in the locker room? Drop a couple names and what they really meant to you in those early days of the league.
Yeah, I mean, again, growing up, people that I watch on TV. I mean, Chris Woods was playing as a goalkeeper, as an England goalkeeper, was playing for Colorado. Mo Johnson was playing. He come over from Celtic. Hugo Sanchez from Real Madrid, Donadoni. It was Valderrama. You've just seen him playing a World Cup in the US, and so these guys are like you're sharing a pitch on the same pitch as them, but. It was hard not to be a little bit starstruck, right, when you're playing and you're on the pitch and you're like, okay, focus on the game and try to keep the ball out of the net. But there was some, even the US side of things. One player that I always thought that and again, I don't think he was underrated because he ended up playing for Everton or played in the Premier League. But Brian McBride was, St. Louis as well. He was young and just a really handful of a player to play against for Columbus. But for me, that's person I was super impressed with was Joe Max Muller. I remember Joe Max. He was just the kid. I mean, just as far as competing and everything, whether it was soccer, tennis in the locker room, or he just wanted to win everything. And I was super impressed with that. And he was someone that kind of for me was someone that I kind of stood out in our team. But it was fun, and Brad Friedel was somebody that I got to know a little bit because he came back from Europe and he was playing at Columbus for a spell before going back to Europe. There was some really great players in that league.
Yeah, I love it. You know what? You've kind of opened the door to my favorite question. It's the whole it question, because I think this is a great opportunity to maybe transition from you as a player and the players that you played with, against, etc., and transitioning into maybe your college, more the coaching phase. And that is, you talk about Joe Max Moore, and this is why I brought it up. His desire to win at everything, checkers, ping pong, soccer, etc. It seems like a through line in a lot of individuals that, have a position similar to yours, that when they look for players, when they look for that something special, the majority of the time, it's not a description of a technical or a tactical player. It's this something special. Can you take a second and describe maybe through your own experience as a player with players that have that, and then as a coach from the standpoint of what you're looking for when it comes to that it factor?
I mean, it's such the intangibles that players have that you can't measure, you know, and you can maybe find out by getting to know them personally and you know, digging deeper and just being more familiar with who they are as a person. But you know, if you've got somebody in your team or in your squad who is that competitive, as long as they don't, you know, doesn't cross over the boundaries, and sometimes it can get pretty close. It just drives the culture and drives the you know, the toughness and the will to win of your team. I mean, they're worth their weight in gold, you know, and sadly, I think maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know if we have quite as many as that. I don't know if, you know, and again, I have my feelings on it, but you know, having that player who is just committed to it, and you know, even if he's having a bad day, he's still going to be in the fight, you know, and it's going to help your team and help the team, you know, overcome adversity or get you over the line. Super hard to measure, but you're constantly trying to find those competitive guys. And you know, at the end of the day, you know, it's about wins and losses when you're in the on a pitch, and maybe it's that last ditch tackle or just that willingness to run the extra 5 yards to defend a cross or defend a runner in the box. You know, that you can't teach that, and that's an innate characteristic that you certainly try to have, and try to find guys who have that characteristic.
So quick follow-up on that. How do you differentiate between, or what is the difference for you between seeing it on the field and somebody that you know is like, you know, they're a goal down and you just see them take the game and they're going to go get that goal, whatever. There's a body language that comes along with that, versus the stuff off the field, the conversations, you know, maybe the demeanor, you know, the communication within a locker room or amongst the coaching staff. You know, what is the difference to you when it comes to finding that competitor? You know, what do you value more, or do you value them equally?
I'm sure to answer this. I think I know what you're trying to ask, but I think if you've got, I think if you have players who have that characteristic, it's to not dim it either, right? Because sometimes they probably will go over the edge a little bit as far as, you know, being overly competitive when it's in training, or maybe, you know, a tackle that's put in, it's like, oh, you know, that's just competing and then maybe going over the top. But you don't want to dim that. And I think also you got to have the capability to encourage guys. Like that's a superpower. Like let's continue to grow with that, and as long as it's under control. You know, when it comes down to it and it's the last 5 minutes of a game and you're maybe, you know, winning 1-0, or you're trying to get the final or tie the game up, that's when you see the guy. That's when you need those guys to step up. And if you try to stint it, or you know, limit that impact, or kind of you know, calm them, or take that out of that fire out of them, then you know, you're actually doing them a disservice, and the team needs that at that moment. So you got to be prepared to kind of manage it, but encourage it as well.
I want to follow up on that a little bit, because one of the things I found really amazing about a 25-year career at the same school is the amount of assistant coaches that you've had over the years that have helped you, not just on, you know, film and sidelines and game strategies, but in the recruitment side. And I haven't done the full family tree research to find all these pictures out, Coach, so I apologize. But can you talk a little bit about the pride you have maybe in some of the folks that you have kind of helped shepherd on, like the coaches you had at UNC and at Greensboro and at Charlotte and at all these other places? Can you talk about the guys that have helped build the teams that you've had over the last couple of years and keep things fresh? Because I think you've got some amazing folks that have worked for you. You have some amazing folks that work for you now. I just want to hear a little bit about their stories too, because that's part of, in my mind, that's part of your story. And it's relevant to the question that JB asked, because you have to instill in them what you care about, so they go out and find those kind of guys to help the team.
I think it goes back to it, Zach, is I had some tremendous, you know, listen, over the years, you spend so much time, and it's true, you spend more time with your assistant than you do with your wife and your kids. You know, and for me, trying to bring in good people, good character, it's what we're looking for from our players too, right? You know, that you bring it into your program and bring it into to your environment. You know, Zach Haynes is doing a tremendous job at High Point. Zach Shalowski's up at Pitt. You know, we've had guys come through who've maybe gone back into the club game or still involved in soccer. But you know, you look at that and you like, if I've never tried to be like a micromanager when it comes to those guys. I mean, if for me, I want them to be part of very much involved in all aspects of the program. So when they leave here, you know, they know how to work a budget. You know, they can plan training sessions. They know, you know, the recruiting, how to go about or improve recruiting. So I've never been a guy just like, I do all the coaching. You know, probably, you know, I've been very careful that like, let's bring those guys along so that they can have the opportunity when it presents itself and go on to do the same thing and manage their own programs and do well. So no, I've been very, very fortunate and bringing in good people, and you know, the staff we work hard and we put a lot of time in. So you need guys who have that work ethic and are prepared to roll their sleeves up and put the time in.
Let's pivot just for 1 second into one thing, JB, that I think is really important about the Wilmington program and coach, your legacy there, which is Harry's game, and just the focus you've put on community service with your team, but also giving them opportunities to highlight, you know, things that are important to you. So could you maybe walk us through a little bit about Harry's game, what that means to you and your family, and then anything else you want to add to that?
Thanks for that, Zach. For JB, my child, I've got a son, 13-year-old. I've got two daughters too, Maeve and Millie, who are, you know, a junior in high school and a sophomore in high school, Maeve and Millie. But Harry was born with Down syndrome, so you know, he's nonverbal, 13 years of age, and so you know, we've been kind of, you know, there's no roadmap, right? There's no roadmap when you have any child, right? But having a child with special needs certainly has some other challenges, and it's been something that, you know, the players who come through our program have got to know Harry, and you know, we do put an emphasis here at UNCW on community and giving back. You know, we are tremendously supported here. We get good crowds. It's a good little soccer town, and you know, the fans come out and support us, but we are willing to give back to them in several ways. But one of the main ones is we have a game every year, and Andy Fleming, who I know you had on your program not too long ago, you know, he has a daughter with Down syndrome, and he started a game, and I was like, Andy, I'm curious, would you mind if I steal your idea here at Wilmington? And he certainly, you know, said, yeah, absolutely. So we started Harry's game, and it's something where we do clinics in the springtime with kids with special needs, you know, about a 4-week program every Sunday. And then we culminate with our game against a top opponent. And it's really cool. I got to tell you, Zach, as well, the coaches who, you know, have embraced this as well, and they bring the teams down, and then we run this clinic before the game, and we mix our guys in with players from the team you're about to compete against. And we coach the kids and have a great time, and then we go warm up and compete. And you know, it's always well attended, and we auction shirts during the game jerseys. We get special game jerseys, and then ticket prices we sell, you know, to we give money back to Special Olympics and, you know, Coastal Buds, which is the Down syndrome group in town. So I tell you, we think we're helping. We think we're helping the kids in our community. But I tell you, the real winners are our guys, because it's amazing to see the connections. And then, you know, some guys that they haven't been around kids that are non-typical kids, and to see some of them come out of their shell all of a sudden going, you know, they're too much different from I am, and seeing that growth and development in them, it really, I'm tremendously proud of it. I'm tremendously proud of how our guys embrace it for us as well.
And it's also great, you know, this is a little bit of a newer tradition, but Olivia's game is another way for you guys to give back and honor a former player, and, you know, some of the challenges that they've had as well. I won't stick on too mmany of these types of things, because JB's got some really good questions, but I just think it's such an important aspect of the college soccer game, especially in a town like Wilmington, where your team is part of the community, and you're an entertainment provider for the fall. There are no big pro sports, although some things might be changing at some point. But
Yeah.
that's a big deal. And so anything you guys are doing to give back, it's a testament to you, your legacy, your leadership. So I appreciate that. JB, I know you've got a couple of questions about the recruitment process, especially given that there's 17 D1 schools within a radius of
yeah. I mean, it's so in kind of, I don't do a lot of homework on purpose because I like to learn in real time on these conversations. But the thing that's jumping out at me is 25 years and you're in the backyard of the ACC, right? So not only are you kind of breaking a lot of molds and trends when it comes to longevity at a singular school, but you're also doing it in arguably the most competitive region in America when it comes to college soccer. And what comes along with that is the expectation to win, and what kind of fuels that is the recruiting process. Can you take a second and just talk about how you succeed in the recruiting process when you're not just competing against normal conference foes? you're competing against guys down the block that are the blue, quote, blue bloods, right? How does that work for you? How do you approach it, and how have you been successful in that sphere?
I think it's maybe changed a little bit these days with how things are going and transfer portal and internationals and that sort of thing. But we've always tried to recruit the best North Carolina kids that we could, the best domestic kids we can, and then sprinkle in some internationals, within our framework of the team. I'm looking for those guys who want to play and compete against the quote unquote sweatshirt schools, right? And that's we've had great success with guys who buy into that. Now with that comes there's a demand, you have to commit to that and put the work in, right? Because talent's not going to get you. We're playing against some super talented teams. But it's just, we don't have to, the league itself, we're in the Coastal Athletic Association, it goes as far north as Boston, all the way down to, Charleston, South Carolina. It's a very challenging league, from the level of the opponents to the travel and types of, conditions you have to play in with different, playing up north and maybe in Drexel on a turf field versus playing in Wilmington on a Bermuda grass. It's really fun from that perspective. But our non-conference schedule, we'll play whoever will play us, and that's in and around us, and compete against those guys. And in my mind, that's why kids come to play at UNCW, and why we want them here is to pit themselves and try and be the best and compete against the best.
How important is it for you, just from a personal, just almost like an ego standpoint, the spring tournament there in your state, any non-conference games to pick up UNC or Duke or Wake or whoever, right?
Yeah.
How, like, after 25 years of doing this there, like, is that kind of a priority when it comes to non-conference to hammer your backyard?
Yeah, honestly, sometimes we haven't been able to get those games, because we've had some good games and some success, and so we're grateful sometimes when someone will actually come and play us here instead of us having to go and play at their place. NC State, for example, came to us this year, and we'll go back to them. Wake came to us 2 years ago, but that was the first time in a while. So if we're talking about growing the game, playing those games at a home school, that's the way it should be. It's a big ask sometimes, because some of those guys don't want to come because it's a hard game for them, as I hope it should be. But no, I think in this area it's not about, I don't have to motivate our players to play against those games games, because if I've got a kid from Charlotte who's grown up in the state and he's playing against Chapel Hill, he's already motivated. Sometimes I have to kind of calm him down a little bit and do the opposite. So no, they're just good games, and we just enjoy the best competition. That's why we're here.
Well, I've been doing a little recon, and we had another head coach, his first head coach job at Loyola Chicago with Kevin Robeson, who came from IU. planted the seed that he needs to do a reciprocation game at Wilmington, but he said he's already signed up with Wake for next year. And I said, well, that's not that far. So we'll get a Chicago Wilmington game going on.
Direct flight from Wilmington. I kid you not.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's good to branch out and maybe play an out of region game as well. You know, we've played at Ohio State before, and you know, we've been down to Florida and played teams down there. So you know, we'll travel as well. But depends on conference schedule and how all that, you know, how many flights you take in a year and that sort of thing.
So we've been talking a little bit about recruiting there in your backyard, competing against your neighbors. But I would be remiss if I didn't bring up just kind of recruiting from a general standpoint. We have a lot of parents that listen to the show that are trying to figure out what is going on in college soccer in general, let alone at the top level. Can you just take a second and describe how you view it right now, specifically given all the alphabet leagues from MLS Next to MLS Next 2 to ECNL all the way down? Then you have high school in some regions, others you don't. You've got portal, you have internationals. Can you kind of break down maybe, you know, where your focus is from a, you know, if we take a 2, 3, 4 year little bundle of time, right? You know, here, what are you seeing? Where are you recruiting? You know, what is the focus, and how do you balance it out?
Yeah, I think it's important that when you're trying to recruit, you try and see players over an extended period of time, right? Because you go and watch one game and a kid has an unbelievable performance, and that may be the best game that kid's ever had in his life. So if you're talking about someone who's maybe not in your backyard, it's important you get to see him as much as possible and do your legwork. I think, you know, MLS Next, you know, ECNL, we cover those extensively. You know, we do look at the portal. I think, you know, it would be crazy not to. But I also think that, you know, if you're not getting the kids that you feel can elevate your program or better than the players you currently have, then why would you bring in someone from a school who maybe, you know, I think a lot of teams are taking guys who have experience. I don't know if they're the most talented players, but they've played. So I guess it depends on your own philosophy, but if that's the case, then why would we not bring in a kid who's a talented kid who's going to be there for 4 years as opposed to 1 or 2? You know, philosophically, I think, you know, we talk about that a lot. If you know, can we help guys come in and grow with us and be with us and, you know, graduate from UNCW? Yeah, we brought 2 guys in the January window. One was a player that I'd recruited before, who's coming in for a year, but I know him very, very well. And another was a goalkeeper who was, you know, still has, you know, 2 years of eligibility. So that makes a lot of sense. But I think it's all up to, you know, philosophically, you know, can you cover the areas, and are the players in there that are talented enough? I think there's a lot of domestic players that you know, are going to fall through the cracks, unfortunately, because there's just not as many roster spots as this merry-go-round of transfers from school to school is happening. And then, you know, piggyback the fact that there's more internationals coming in than ever before. I'm not saying right or wrong. That's it, right. Again, it depends on the institution and what their goals and what their philosophy is. So yeah, I think it's a tough time for high school seniors who are coming out, because it may take them a little bit of time, or they may have to go and go the JUCO route, or, you know, find another pathway. But that's unfortunately, that's the way it's have to be.
Let me ask a quick follow-up, kind of a part 2 of that, based on what you've given me so far. How do you balance your own personal loyalty, 25 years at a singular school, with the accelerated short-term relationships between players and schools? Where the other night, Zach, you know, when we were talking to Roby, you know, Zach made a point to say, you know, a lot of people view these as 10-month contracts, right? And that's the player, you know, the portal and everything turning over. Like, are you okay with it? Do you like it? Would you, if you had the keys to the car, NCAA, to, you know, change it, would you? Or do you just kind of like deal with it? What's your approach to the short-term relationship status?
Yeah, thankfully, we have not had a lot of turnover or guys that have left to go pursue, to transfer out. For the ones who have transferred out have usually gone because they want to play more, and again, we had two guys, one went home this past fall, didn't come back to the States. He was an international, and one was a goalkeeper who, he needed to play, and we wanted him to play, but he wasn't able to crack the lineup. So thankfully we haven't dealt with that, JB, on a level that some schools are having to do that. Maybe that's coming. I struggle with the thought of having those relationships and building those relationships for them to say, oh, thanks very much, I'm out, just because X, Y, and Z is going to give me money, or it's probably coming, or will come, but I still feel like I want to have those relationships. That's the reason I came into college, and help guys grow, and not just athletically, but personally, and I'll continue to keep trying to do that, and maybe my heart will be broken a few times, but I think that's something that I know I feel as part of my job as a coach, and I would hate to be so cut and dry and say, well, I'm just this kid's coming for 10 months, and we'll see where he is at the end of it.
Is the rule too loose though? The one thing that I asked is if you could call the ball, would you make a change?
Yeah, because that's where that comment came from. Is the fact that you're seeing it in college football and basketball. It's leaking into soccer. I mean, 49% of the guys that got drafted this year had transferred at least once, and so it is a reality.
Yeah.
My question really, and I think I know where your head is on this, but if you could make those types of changes, what would you change? How would you joystick things from a policy standpoint if you could?
Yeah, I tell you and again, there's soccer, and then there's the basketball football model, but I think we do need to be careful. I think we're setting kids up for failure to, one bump in the road, no, I'm out, I'm on the next school. That's not real life, right? We're not given the skill set to deal with the adversity that is inevitably going to come with what we have to deal as parents and elder, grown adults. But I don't know if it's a requirement where you have to, if you sign somebody, you have to stay a minimum of 2 years. Is there some way that they, if they're getting some kind of scholarship, that they don't get their scholarship, or I don't know. Again, I think of that with basketball and football, where they're getting paid silly money. And then they jump because they're going to get paid an extra whatever it is.
Well, you had just this week, my alma mater, the University of Tennessee, had a game against Alabama at Alabama for basketball. They had a player that played in his first game of the season. He'd been playing in the G League, which is basically MLS Next Pro, for 3 years. Came in and they started him.
Yeah. And
that's why I asked these types of questions, not because I think it's the right thing. It's just it's part of where things are right now. I'm hoping that cooler heads prevail. And I want to get off this topic for a second because it just really bothers me.
Pressure's going up.
It is, because I think the same way that you do. And JB and I have had this conversation, Jared and I, who's our other co-host. The idea that you go somewhere for a 10-month contract, or even 2 years, with the idea of leaving at some point, it's not helpful. And here's the reality. Most soccer players, especially, they're going to need a degree.
Yeah.
And if you're transferring more than once in a 4-year career, there's no way you're graduating from any one of those institutions, because you just can't do it. So I appreciate your thought on that. My big question, and maybe I'm stepping into something that I shouldn't, but you talked about being a Newcastle fan through and through. But do you not have a somewhat relationship with another team a little bit further south in London that's maybe top of the table right now?
I could say something really derogatory about that team right now, which would be in relation to their name. But hey, I grew up when Manchester United won everything. So I mean, Man United were like, oh, don't even get me started on them. I actually like the way Arsenal play, and I think they'll win the league. But it doesn't, more so than Man United. As long as Manchester United don't win it, I don't really.
I agree. I
there we go.
Michael Carrick is on a tear, and I don't understand it.
But I do. Michael Carrick's from Newcastle. I hope he does well, but not better than Newcastle. But back to your point, and again, it's basketball and football. How's a guy who's been playing in the J League? What's his eligibility? He's come in for a year. He's not planning on getting a degree. I mean, he's just getting paid.
Absolutely not.
It's not. We've just gone. We've gone completely the opposite direction of what college athletics, amateurism, what it was.
Here's the part that bothers me the most about all of it is I don't even blame the NCAA anymore. I don't blame the universities and the athletic directors. They are operating as a business. I blame U.S. Soccer. They had the opportunity to come in, be a good steward, a partner in this process. Because if U.S. Soccer is now having more and more difficulty trying to connect the dots between homegrowns who are, gobbling up the bright, shiny lights of these 2 deals and everything else, and they're not coming to fruition, right? And the college game is probably, I don't think it's been more competitive, more parity than what we're seeing right now. And like, you guys are the incubator. That yes, of course, there are the players that are over in Europe and that, that are always going to be in that first team circle.
Yeah.
But the true pipeline, college soccer, right? And I think somebody could easily put some caps on it. Let's implement some Olympic style rules with age and eligibility and everything else, not for the benefit of NCAA, but for the benefit of our national team, of our soccer. Do you ever think about that? Do you ever have those conversations or thought process? Because it feels as if, as valuable as college soccer is, it's on an island.
Mm-hmm. No, I think U.S. Soccer's involvement would be, and as it seems like they're trying to get involved. I'm not so much when you talk about the homegrowns too, and the guys who have gone maybe for 2 years and are playing MLS next from, I don't have a problem if they come to college, because I think the internationals have been doing that anyway. They've been playing at a level and been getting, maybe they've been getting some expenses. So I'm not opposed to that. I mean, listen, when I was at App State, we're playing Furman and you had Ricardo Clark and Clint Dempsey were in midfield. It's like, there's players who mature later. The college experience, you can also continue to help in their development. And, we can't just think it's, well, if they're not training, they're not training on, doing X amount of hours a week because they're not at a pro club. Shouldn't exclude them. I still think there's a lot of value to college athletics and college soccer in general to help future pros and hopefully national team guys.
Coach, we have kind of one more question, and it's getting to the end of our time here with you, and we really appreciate all the time you've given us so far. But it's going to come down to the World Cup is back.
Yeah.
And I just need you to tell me who's going to win.
Well, I don't remember one of my former captain is Austin McPhee, JB. He's the Aston Villa restart coach, and I think Portugal have got a really good shot. Maybe this is Ronaldo's final swan song, but I'd like to see them do well. Obviously, England, I think I think they've got a good manager in Tuchel, and can maybe they can finally get to that to that point.
Do you see a parallel between, and this is another thing I think about a lot, when MLS came on board in '96, it was trying to catch really 3 leagues, in the world. It was, okay, we need to match these 4 pro leagues. That's our North Star. But when you look at kind of the growth of global soccer, the success of a nation like Morocco, or take your pick. I don't care. Like, again, that delta has shrunk, not only here domestically between ACC schools and mid majors, and because college soccer is starting to turn into Any Given Sunday, but so is the global game. So my question is, this World Cup that Zach was alluding to, now we have 48 teams or however many teams are coming in. Like, is that good for the game, Or should we make it tougher? Because it feels as if everybody's getting a trophy.
Yeah.
Which is ultimately making it possible for anybody to win.
I'm not in favor of expanding the World Cup. I think again, the players who are playing in it are playing so much already, and now you're taking on more games for the World Cup. And let's be honest, is Curacao going to, are they going to, make any waves in the World Cup? No, they're not. I mean, it's just, so it's playing a game. These guys have to go out, and it's just for, again, broaden the spectrum and trying to promote the game. I get all that part, but it's the World Cup, and it's the best of the best. And I think we're just diluting it a little bit and making it a little bit harder for the teams who are extending the tournament at length and playing more games. It doesn't lend itself to helping the team.
You bring up Curacao, and I think what's going to change this is if one of those types of teams knocks out a blue blood, like a Portugal or a Spain or some. I don't think that's going to happen, but somebody who was expected to move forward, like the U.S. as a group leader, I think that's going to have a real impact. But then it could also refute the point from the very beginning. No, that's why we brought them here, because they should be able to compete. I don't know. I'm curious.
I have a conspiracy theory, fellas. Given the growth of DraftKings, Kalshi, and all of the above, the betting market has seen the success of March Madness. Why not expand the World Cup pool? Because if you nail a Curacao versus Netherlands, you're making a lot of money. It's always about money.
I wonder what. Remember '94, Colombia getting beat off the US. I mean, that was
Yep.
Love it. Remember England 1950 when they sent a message back, and I know a lot of St. Louis people on that team, and they sent the text, the message back, and said they thought they got it wrong and that England had won 10-0.
Yeah.
No. Our good little hill boys just down the road here.
That's right.
A bunch of Southside Parish kids.
Yeah, Coach. There's a bar here in St. Louis called Amsterdam Tavern, and it is it's a football pub. Yeah. And they have a picture on the wall of that 1950 team with signatures from all the guys from St. Louis. And it's the starting order. There's probably, was it 8 guys, JB?
I think it's 6 on the picture.
Yeah, 6 on the picture. It's unreal. But Coach, listen, we've taken too much of your time.
Not at all.
There's a lot of other topics we could have covered with you, NIL and all kinds of other things, which we didn't get to, but maybe in a repeat episode we'll get to. But really appreciate it. And JB, anything else?
Yeah, you two don't go anywhere. For those of you listening, thank you very much. You know the deal. We have low self-esteem, so a like, a review, a share, a follow, any of that stuff, it makes our cold, dreary winter days better, because when they come in, I share them with Zach and Jared, and we all celebrate over the phone. And it's just a like. That's all you gotta do. So thank you from Soccer Dad Pod. Until next time, we will see you.